So, hello then, welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, as I continue on with my Harry Potter film reviews, I am reviewing the fourth Harry Potter film, which of course, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. As I've already mentioned, this is the fourth film in the Harry Potter film series, and this one is directed by Mike Newell. The first two Harry Potter films were directed by Chris Columbus. The third Harry Potter film was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and this one is directed by Mike Newell. And Mike Newell is probably best known for directing such films as Four Weddings and a Funeral, Prince of Persia, The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I had to look at my notes there to get the name of the film correct. And Donnie Brasco, which I watched a couple of weeks ago, in preparation for watching this one to sort of see what his direction was like, because I have seen Four Weddings and a Funeral, but not for a while, same with Prince of Persia, so I wanted to see what Mike Newell was like as a director. So I watched Donnie Brasco, and I actually thought it was quite a good film. It didn't blow me away, and it didn't quite engage me emotionally. I didn't connect with it as much as I wanted to, but I thought it was a very well made film. And I was really looking forward to this film for two main reasons. I really enjoyed the last Harry Potter film, and I really enjoyed the one before, Chamber of Secrets. So I'm excited to see where the story is going now, as the kids are becoming more mature, and as the story is becoming more mature, and as, well, not going too much detail yet, but as we're introduced into Voldemort. I remember there was something about Voldemort which is quite important in this film, and well, there's something about Voldemort which is very important in this film. I can say that now after watching it, but I wanted to see how the story progressed, and I'm getting into this franchise now after, watching the first three films, and I wanted to see where the story went, and also I want to see how a different director approached this franchise, because so far, at the point I'm at, we've only seen two directors have a go at directing a Harry Potter movie. We've seen Chris Columbus do it with Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, and then we see Alfonso Cuarón do it with Prisoner of Azkaban. And I wanted to see someone who was going to direct it, who was a better director than Chris Columbus, but not necessarily a visionary director like Alfonso Cuarón is, who did Prisoner of Azkaban. So I was really excited to see what he was going to do as a director, especially because Donnie Brasco is a very different film than any Harry Potter movie. Same with Four Weddings and a Funeral. They're not by any means similar to any of these Harry Potter films. So I wanted to see what his work would be like on a blockbuster, because I have seen Prince of Persia, but not for a very long while. And one thing I should reiterate is that I haven't read any of the Harry Potter books, so this is a review from somebody who is not familiar with the source material. You might get some details incorrect, you might get some names of characters or names of places incorrect, although I don't think I'll be referring to any names or locations in this podcast anyway, but I might get some details incorrect. So yes, this is a review from somebody who has not read the book, so bear that in mind. But anyway, I watched Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire yesterday. I watched it on DVD, this one, not on Netflix. I watched it with my brother and my gran, which was quite an interesting experience, because she wouldn't stop commenting on things that are happening during the film, which actually made the experience a little bit better. But I watched it yesterday, and here are my thoughts on this film. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was solidly enjoyable, and it sort of felt like a roller coaster. You're thrown into this story in this one. There's no lead-in. There's none of the Dudleys are in this film. You're thrown into the story. You're thrown into what's going on. Harry is already with the Weasley family. Hermione is there too. They're going to the Quidditch World Cup, and like, whoa, there's all this stuff going on. And I will admit, and I'll get into this in more detail a bit later in this review, but I will admit, the first, I don't know, 20 minutes of the film was really messy for me. It might be a bit longer than 20 minutes. Actually, it might be more like an hour. The first section of the film, let's say that, the first section of the film I found to be very messy and a bit all over the place. Although I was enjoying it because it threw me in there and it felt like one big roller coaster. And the whole film felt like one big roller coaster. It felt literally like a Harry Potter theme park ride. And there actually is one at Universal Studios. I've seen clips from that online, by the way. That looks like a great theme park ride. Regardless if you're a fan of Harry Potter or not. You know, if you're a fan of theme park rides, I would I would consider looking that one up on YouTube or wherever and seeing the point of view video of somebody on there. Anyway, I digress. I'm off topic there. Going back on to what I was saying. This felt like a roller coaster ride, and I really liked how it developed the story more than anything, because we finally get to see Ralph Fiennes play Voldemort in this film. We've seen incarnations of Voldemort in the past couple of movies, but we haven't properly seen him. We haven't seen him played by Ralph Fiennes, and, well, spoiler there, I should probably give him a spoiler warning, but the film's been out for 19 years now. You've had a chance to see the film if you wanted to. In the finale of the film, Harry faces off against Voldemort, and Ralph Fiennes, when he's introduced to Voldemort, he just owns it from the get-go. Ralph Fiennes is an incredible actor. I don't totally agree with everything he says outside of his profession, but I think he is a really absorbing, actually not absorbing the right word, but he's a compelling actor. He's a magnetic actor, and his performance is compelling and magnetic as Voldemort, and the way he's introduced and the way that scene is shot is so good to watch. It is a scene which I was completely hooked in throughout it. I don't know how long the scene went on for. It felt like it went on for a while, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I was completely hooked, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen during the Voldemort introduction in this film. And the whole finale of the film I thought was brilliant. I loved it, and the reveal with Mad-Eye Moody, where you actually find out that he's David Tennant's character, and I love the fact that David Tennant's in this film. I'll get onto that very shortly in more detail, but David Tennant's one of my favourite actors, so I love the fact that he's in this film. When you get the reveal that Mad-Eye Moody isn't actually Mad-Eye Moody, and he's taken over by what's the name of David Tennant's character, Barty Crouch Jr. I had to look at my notes there, I couldn't remember the character name off the top of my head, but Barty Crouch Jr., when you find out that he has been using the Polyjuice potion to pretend that he was Mad-Eye Moody and get Harry Potter into the Tri-Wizard tournament. The way that reveal was done, I thought, was, again, brilliant. I was hooked to the screen in the finale of this film. Although, as already mentioned, I found the first act of this film to be a little messy. It's one of those films which got better the more I watched it. The more this film progressed, I got more engaged with it. I started to connect with the story more, and something I really admired was how this film, unlike Prison of Azkaban did for me a little bit, this film didn't feel like you had to watch the previous three films in order to understand what was going on. Like Prison of Azkaban, I spoke about in my view of that, it felt like you had to have either read the Harry Potter books or seen Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets to understand what was going on in that film. Whilst here, it didn't feel like you needed to do that. It felt like you know what, it felt like a summer blockbuster. I'm not sure if it came out in summer 2005, and that's something I haven't actually really touched on yet. This film came out in 2005, only a year after Prison of Azkaban. But anyway, it felt like a summer blockbuster. It felt like It felt like a popcorn flick. And I often hate using that phrase. I haven't used it many times on this channel, but that's what it felt like. And it felt like an event movie. like most blockbusters do nowadays. When a new blockbuster comes out, say like a Dune Part 2, or over the past couple of years, a Top Gun Maverick, and Avatar: The Way of Water, when those films come out over the past couple of years, they feel like event movies. They feel like movies that everybody goes to cinema to see. And even though I don't know if this was an event movie when it came out in 2005, it felt like one. And I mean that in the best way possible, because not only are there all these events going on in the film itself, with the Tri-Wizard tournaments and everything like that taking place at Hogwarts, not only does this film have events taking place in them, it felt like the first movie where Warner Brothers realised this is actually quite a big franchise that we're earning a lot of money off. It felt like this was the first film when they realised that. It felt like they realised that actually after Prison of Azkaban, and then they put it into they tried to make this film feel more like a blockbuster than the previous three films, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it was a well produced, well directed, not brilliantly directed, but well directed blockbuster, which was entertaining to watch. And it's got a runtime of like 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it flew by. It genuinely felt like the film was about 90 minutes. And again, I enjoyed Prison of Azkaban, but that has a similar sort of runtime, maybe around 2 hours 20 minutes, so 20 minutes less, and that film felt as long as it was, whilst this film, in my opinion, didn't. That all being said, I still didn't love the film, though. Even though I had a really good time watching it, and it felt like a roller coaster, and it felt like a very fun summer sort of blockbuster. It felt like an event movie, and in the way I really liked about it, even though there was a lot of stuff I liked about this film, even though there was a lot of stuff I liked about it, I still don't love it, though. And I think I'm starting to wonder whether I'll actually ever love any of these Harry Potter movies, because, I did some looking up online after seeing Prison of Azkaban, and that seems to be the movie that people like the most out of the Harry Potter franchise. And I can understand why. It's definitely the best directed the Harry Potter films I've seen yet, and that is including this one. So I'm starting to wonder whether I'm actually ever going to love any of these Harry Potter movies, because they don't quite have the magic for me, in terms of filmmaking anyway, as, say, I compare to The Lord of the Rings quite a lot in these podcasts when I talk about in my Harry Potter film reviews. I compare to The Lord of the Rings quite a lot. But for me, these films don't have the same magic in the filmmaking, in the craft, that the Lord of the Rings films had. When you watch a Lord of the Rings film, I mean, you feel this magic coming off the screen in the way everything's been crafted just like that. And I haven't felt that with any of the Harry Potter films. And I don't feel that again here. I think Mike Newell did a good job directing this film. Not a great job, but a good job. And I think that was also a problem, because I didn't feel any magic in his direction. None of his direction made me go, wow, I haven't seen this done in a blockbuster like this before. It felt very much like the sort of standard blockbuster filmmaking you would expect in a film like this. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a terrible thing. I actually liked his directing here. But I almost wish Alfonso Cuarón directed this film and Mike Newell directed Prison of Azkaban, because Prison of Azkaban and its story felt, like I've already mentioned, more closed off in my opinion, whilst Goblet of Fire felt more open in its story, felt more inviting and more engaging. And I think if this film was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, it could have had that magic to it, which I haven't felt with this franchise so far. Yeah, I didn't think it was the best directed. Also, clearly, the Harry Potter films have become more CGI focused from Prison of Azkaban onwards. I'm really missing the practical effects of Chamber of Secrets, not going to lie. Chamber of Secrets, the spider sequence in that film. You're going to hear me going on about Chamber of Secrets a little bit in these future podcasts, in these future Harry Potter reviews, should I say, if they keep using visual effects, if the CGI still doesn't look that good, you're going to hear me going about the practical effects in Chamber of Secrets, because I remember watching Chamber of Secrets and going, wow, there's some obvious, bits and pieces in terms of CGI which are quite obvious, but for the most part, the practical effects are really working. And I love when a fantasy film like Harry Potter uses practical effects. I think it makes the film feel more real. Whereas at this point in the franchise, it feels like they're relying more on CGI. It felt like that since Prison of Azkaban, actually. And there was some half decent CGI in this film, but also the CGI is dated because the film is 19 years old, and there were some parts where the CGI did take me out of it. I didn't mind the CGI, say the look of the dragon that Harry faced off against in the first game in the Triwizard Tournament. The dragon that Harry faced off against, I like the look of the dragon, but it looks like 2005 CGI, and not great 2005 CGI at that. Yeah, there was some CGI in this film which did take me out of it, and some of the effects surrounding Hagrid and the tall woman, I forgot what the name is, but the woman that Hagrid has a bit of a fling with in this film, the effects to make those characters look taller than all the other characters in this film didn't work for me either. I could tell that these actors, I could tell that Robbie Coltrane, who plays Hagrid, and the one who plays the tall woman, weren't actually in the same room as all the other actors when they were doing these scenes. The effects they used to try and make these actors look taller than they actually were didn't work for me, and at times it felt like the film was trying to be more exciting than it actually was in terms of the storytelling that was going on. Like, again, going back onto Mike Newell's direction, I think he did a good job directing this film, but I don't think his direction quite had the magic, as I've already said. And it felt like Patrick Doyle's score, Patrick Doyle's don't know what's going on with me today. Patrick Doyle's musical score for this film was trying to do all the heavy lifting with adding magic to this film. That's what it felt like, because there were so many moments when I was watching this yesterday going, what are you doing with the musical score? It sounds way too over the top. It's taking me out of this scene. For instance, with the Yule Ball stuff and the musical score going in the background of all that, I was like, this doesn't need to be as over the top as it is. I'm missing John Williams, because John Williams, he composed music to the first 3 Harry Potter films. I don't think he did the music, no, he definitely didn't do the music to any of the other Harry Potter movies, although I wish he returned at some point, but he didn't. And I think it was a huge, huge misstep for the producers of the Harry Potter franchise to let John Williams go. I mean, yes, he was very busy in 2005 composing the music for such films as War of the Worlds, Munich, Memories of a Geisha, Star Wars Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith. He was composing a lot of films. He was composing the music to a lot of films in 2005, but it still would have been nice to have him compose some music for this film, because I don't think Patrick Doyle, who is a composer I'm not overly familiar with, he has composed something else which I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I'm not overly familiar with Patrick Doyle as a composer, and I do not think he did the best job with the musical score for this film. It felt like, listening to it and listening to the way it was used in the film, it sounded like pseudo John Williams. It sounded like he was trying to capture that same John Williams magic in the previous 3 Harry Potter musical scores. I did not really love the musical score for this film. Maybe it's because, I'm still a bit salty that it's not John Williams composing anymore, but John Williams' scores for all of the first 3 Harry Potter movies have this magic to them. This magic that the films themselves don't necessarily give off without that John Williams musical score. And I felt that because this film didn't have the John Williams musical score, it didn't have the magic that I wanted it to. Plus, as I already mentioned earlier on, the film was messy and took me a little while to get into. It was jumping all over the place, and it felt like I was trying to get to so much. It felt like I was trying to get to a certain point in its first hour that it took me a little to get into, and it didn't quite have the breathing space in terms of the pacing that I wanted it to have. I do think the pacing with this film is slightly all over the place. I think there are some parts of the film which are well paced. For instance, the finale of the film, I think that is a very well paced. I think the whole third act of the film is very well paced, but the first act was, I was longing for some breathing space with what was going on. I was longing for the film to slow down a little and just tell me where these characters are at this point in the story. And the film did eventually do that when Harry was selected for the Tri-Wizard tournament. The film itself felt like it was rushing to get to Harry being part of the Tri-Wizard tournament, and I didn't like that. You know, it throws you straight in, and I would have liked there to be... I didn't love that. Let's just say that. But that all being said, I do think this is a very enjoyable film, and it might be my favourite of the Harry Potter films yet, simply because of how much fun it was to watch and how it never really stopped. Kind of like a roller coaster doesn't. You know, it doesn't really stop, and I liked it about it. It just kept going, and all the scenes in this film felt necessary, and I really liked the ending, which is one thing I've touched on but haven't really gone into. I'm not just talking about the film's finale with the stuff in the maze, with Voldemort's introduction, with Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort's introduction, should I say. I also mean the very final scene where Harry is talking to Hermione and Ron, and Hermione goes, "Everything is going to change now," and Harry goes, "Yes, it is." He just says it as it is. Yes, it's going to change. But then he says something like, "But we're going to stick together." You know, and I really liked that ending, and how the camera just stayed in one place and let those three walk out of Hogwarts, and then you saw this sunset taking place on the river that is, you know, by Hogwarts. I'm probably explaining the scene awfully, but I really liked that ending and how it sets up future Harry Potter movies, which I can't remember anything about. And I know the story gets darker from here because, well, Voldemort's back. But at the same time, I thought the ending to the film worked very well. And there was one point when I was watching the finale of the film thinking, I'm sorry if you can hear some sound interference outside just then. There was one point in the finale of the film where I was thinking, is this going to have a conclusive end? Is this film going to feel complete? And not only did it feel complete, I think it had the best ending to all the Harry Potter films so far. It fit in with the rest of the film. And that whole finale, I thought was... I mean, I've already said this already, but I'm going to say it again because I did really like it. I thought it was terrific. I thought it was a terrific finale that I was completely hooked in. When Dumbledore says some people go into the maze and don't return the same, and then when you see Harry face off Voldemort for the first time, I loved all that. Also, I'll quickly talk about some of the new characters. I've already spoken about Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort. I think he is perfectly cast, and as soon as he comes on screen, you can tell that Ralph Fiennes is owning that role every second. He's loving playing this role, and yeah, he's chewing up the scenery, but in the way that works for this character, in a way I think the introduction to this character needed. I really love him as Voldemort, and I can't wait to see more of his performance in the next couple of movies, because, well, he's a big bad villain in the next couple of movies. At least, as far as I can remember, he is. I don't actually remember him in the next Harry Potter film, but I remember him... I vaguely remember him in Half-Blood Prince, and I vaguely remember him in Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in future movies. We also had the Batman in this film, didn't we? We had Robert Pattinson as, what's his name? Cedric... something. What is his name? I'm just going to look it up on Google. Give me a sec. He plays Cedric Diggory. I really liked Robert Pattinson in this film because you wasn't sure how to think about him, but then actually in the end you realise it was actually quite a... Well, I wasn't sure how to think about the character throughout most of the film, then you realise in the end he's actually just a good character, he's a good person, he's trying to help Harry in this tournament, even so they're competing against one another, and I really like the way Robert Pattinson played that character. It showed more of a range of him as an actor, because he's completely different in this than he is as the Batman, and he's completely different in the Batman, and he is in this, and he is in Tenet. You know, he's been in plenty of films, and when people say Robert Pattinson isn't a good actor, I say you need to watch more films, because he's actually been in a lot of films. What Good Time. He's very good in Good Time as well. You watch him in more films, they aren't just Twilight, and you'd see there's actually a really, really damn good actor, and I think I found him totally believable in this film. Totally believable. And also, I have not mentioned this yet, Mad-Eye Moody, Brendan Gleeson as Mad-Eye Moody. I remember Mad-Eye Moody was in these films at some point. He was one of the characters I remembered was in the Harry Potter franchise, but I wasn't sure when he came in. and Brendan Gleeson plays him in the perfect way, because he plays him as this mad professor. When I say mad, I mean mad. When you watch Brendan Gleeson as Mad-Eyed Moody, you can believe why people think he's so bad. And Brendan Gleeson, every single time he's on screen, I was drawn to that character. Yeah, I love Brendan Gleeson in this film. I hope he comes back in the later movies. I genuinely don't remember if he does. I genuinely don't remember. I remember he was in one of the films, and it was this film I remembered he was in. But because I haven't seen these films in over a decade, I can't remember if he's in the future films. But I loved him in this film. God, Brendan Gleeson was great as Mad-Eyed Moody. And so was David Tennant as Barty Crouch Jr. Well, that's a lie. I remember David Tennant was in these films, but I thought he was in one of the later movies. I remember he had a small role. And by the way, he did this before he played the 10th Doctor. This is before he did that first series of Doctor Who with Billy Piper as Rose Tyler. You know, it's before he took on probably his most iconic role. And he is brilliant. He's barely in the film. He's not in the film that much. He's in about 3 scenes. But every time he's on screen, I was constantly drawn to him. And that's how you know he's a good performance. Because he doesn't have a big role, but every single time he's on screen, I remembered. Every single time he's on screen, it was a memorable scene. That's what I was meant to say. It was a memorable moment. And I remember every single scene he was in. God, he was great. I hope we get to see him in future films. I can't remember again if he does appear in future movies, but this just reinforced that David Tennant is one of my favourite actors working today. I mean, you look at him in something like Doctor Who, to Broadchurch, to well, I'm freezing off the top of my head right now, to Good Omens, to, I mean, pretty much anything he's in, he's brilliant in. He's such a versatile actor, and I loved him in this film. The fact that he was in this film did make me like it a little bit more, I won't lie. When I saw that David Tennant was in it, I was like, oh, that's instantly taken my liking of this film up a little bit. By the way, look at my hand there. It's in the sunlight. Oh, no. It looks like it's not part of my body when I do that. Anyway, yeah, loved David Tennant in this film, and I really loved how this film developed on so many other characters, so many other supporting characters from previous films that we haven't really got much of thus far in the story, such as the Weasley twins. We got a lot more of them in this film, and I think they're always wonderful to watch. We got a bit more of Jason Isaacs as Sirius Malfoy. I think that's what the character's called. I loved seeing more of him because you actually see you see that he's not quite the person he pretends to be. You know, in Chamber of Secrets, he's trying to be this menacing, evil villain, and here you see that actually he's not quite that antagonist you think he is. He's not quite the person he pretends to be. And that scene that he shares, the moments in the scene that Voldemort's, and the moments that he shares with Voldemort show him to be that character that even he's afraid of Voldemort. Yes, he worked for Voldemort, but even he is slightly afraid of him. And I really liked the way Chamber, I just looked at one of my notes there. I really liked the way Jason Isaacs played that character. I really loved how this film develops on a lot of the supporting characters and showed us more to this wizarding world. The world building here really worked for me, and it gave me more of an idea of how this world works. You know, I loved all the stuff with the Quidditch World Cup early on, and I loved all the stuff with Voldemort's introduction. I know I keep going on about that, but that was the most memorable part of the film to me. I loved the fact that there's actually these tournaments that go on in the Wizarding World, because I didn't know about that before seeing this film. I loved all of that stuff, and the world building really worked for me, particularly with Hogwarts. This was the first film where I actually felt how epic the Harry Potter franchise is, because I've heard people refer to this franchise as epic before, and I haven't felt that with any of the films yet. Then I watched this film, I was like, oh, you know, this, I can see why people call the Harry Potter franchise epic. I mean, it's not quite as epic as other franchises, but I can see why people call it that, because This film felt like an epic. It felt epic in its scale too, and the way it made Hogwarts look. I mean, Hogwarts actually looked like a kingdom in this film. And the way it used Hogwarts, that sequence when the dragon is chasing Harry around Hogwarts when he's on the broom, I loved all that stuff. I found it to be wildly entertaining, this film. It might be my favourite Harry Potter film yet, just because how much it flew by. I mean, I have my problems with it, but in the long run, if I'm going to go back and rewatch one of the Harry Potter movies right now, I might say this one. I might change my mind as the films go on, because I don't know how the later films will affect my liking of this film. Maybe they'll make me like this film better. Maybe they'll actually decrease my liking of this film, and maybe they'll make me like Prison of Azkaban more. I don't know yet, but you know, I really had a great time watching this film, even though the first act was a little hard to get into. The second two acts made up for that and provided me with a really enjoyable time. It felt like a proper blockbuster, a blockbuster which does what it says on the tin. You know, the poster of this film makes it look... You can look at the poster for this film, which I'll probably have up there, you know, in the edit. You look at the poster for this film, and you know what you're getting, and that's what it delivers on. You know, it's a popcorn flick. I hate using that phrase, but I've used it twice in this review today. I might have even used it more. It's a popcorn flick. It's an event movie, and in more ways than one, because of the things that actually happen in this film. And I like how this film genuinely felt like you're watching the events take place. Yes, some of the CGI is obvious, but I felt that all the tournament games that you watch in this film were actually quite intense to watch. Well, for the most part, I didn't really love the underwater sequence, I will admit that, but I felt that most... I'm going to close the curtain, by the way, because I can see that the sun is beginning to shine brightly on me, so one sec. But I felt that most of the tournament games of this film were actually quite suspenseful to watch at times, and yeah, I had a really good time watching this film. I just wish John Williams did the musical score for it, and I wish it had more of a visionary director behind it. I wish Alfonso Cuarón directed this film and not Prison of Azkaban, because I didn't love the story to Prison of Azkaban, and I did really like the story to this though, and I wish it had some better and more unique blockbuster filmmaking behind it. But it's a solidly enjoyable film. It's a solidly enjoyable watch, and that is why I'm going to say that Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, I'm going to say it's a 7.5 out of 10. That's the same rating I gave Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, I do probably prefer this movie over those two, but I can't really give this movie higher than a 7.5 out of 10 yet. Because I didn't love this film, you know? And I'm still yet to love any of the Harry Potter movies, as I've already said. I'm still yet to feel the magic of any of them in terms of the filmmaking and in terms of anything that goes on in the film. I'm still yet to feel the true magic of the Harry Potter franchise. And that's why I can't quite give this film an 8 out of 10, because it didn't quite tick all the boxes for me, you know? Maybe John Williams scored it, might have. I need to get off that. I need to... I'm sounding a bit stubborn, aren't I? If only John Williams scored this film, then it would have been a lot better. But I do think that it's a case, you know. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, but I'm still yet to, feel how truly magical this franchise is, because I've heard people say it is, and, you know, I haven't got that myself yet. But I really liked this film. I really enjoyed it, and it had the main three at the centre of it. It had Harry, Hermione and Ron at the centre of it more than the last film did. It had their relationship at the centre of it, and you saw some strains in their relationship as well, which I really liked. And yeah, the film had a great heart, wildly entertaining. It felt like an event movie, and I really liked that about it. And it's 2 hours and 40 minutes and it flew by, you know. And if a film that is that length in runtime doesn't feel like that length, you know it's done something pretty damn right. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe it's your favourite Harry Potter movie, or maybe it's your least favourite Harry Potter movie. Whatever your thoughts are on Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, please let me know in the comment section below, and look forward to my next Harry Potter film review, which will be my review of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, coming at some point over the next couple of weeks on this channel. But until then guys, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this podcast, and look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it, so I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now, bye.